So as long as this technology works, we'll be in really good shape, you know how that goes these days. So it is my absolute pleasure to be here at Orator Galleries. And Graham, I thank you for inviting me here and letting me share this program of art and science with you. And we are in a very special room. And I could not think of a better venue to give this kind of lecture. Now, we are not going to focus on Audubon per se, but wherever we are in this lecture, in any time that I mention this great botanical artist, Redouté, you could really substitute Audubon. And so the whole world of art and science is connected to whether it be animal, whether it be plant, or whatever. As a botanist, as a plant taxonomist, as a scientist who classifies and catalogs and discovers, explores plants, that's my area of interest. And this program was originally developed from the context of science for the Kimball Art Museum in Fort Worth, Texas, where they had perhaps the first exhibit ever on Redouté. And they wanted a botanist perspective. In fact, that lecture was called A Botanist's Eye, Redouté and the Art of Floral Illustration. So we are going to look back into to time, and we're going to set the stage for where this great artist comes into play. And then I'll wrap up with one slide that will tie this room together with our main subject here. So I have a little, getting over a little head cold. So I've got me plenty of water here, so I should be ready to go. And as long as we are ready, then let's get going here. So we're going to kick off pretty fast, okay? And we'll slow down, take a deep breath, take a drink of water, and then sort of begin the journey from the beginning of the Greeks and the Romans all the way through 1840 with our Pierre-Joseph Redouté. All right? So we will kick it off here, and we'll hold any questions till the end. And if somebody needs to step up away just for a moment, don't worry about it. That will not bother me at all. This program is about 45 minutes, so Mr. Foley will hit me over the head if I go too much longer. That's right. So we will just see what we've got here. All right. Plants are the foundation of all existence. They are the source of our nourishment and health, our pleasures and ecstasies. They have caused some of the brightest and yet some of the darkest chapters of history. They have set us on quests that have opened up the world, sparked war, migration, enslavement, created wealth and dominion of some nations, the poverty and subjection of others. It's not surprising then, the quest for new plants, the search for new plants, has launched men on the most momentous voyages of discovery across oceans and continents. The passion for adventure, discovery, and plant hunting among botanists has been around for centuries. Yet few think of botanists as explorers, adventurers, and discoverers, cast in the same mold as Copernicus, Galileo, and Newton. Yet there were some who ventured into the distant wilds in search of new plants, whose tales of discovery tingle with excitement, whose treasure trove exceeded Pizarro's glittering gold of the Inca. Whether for the sheer love of discovery, the need for a living, or the selfless desire to help mankind, great plantsmen like Alexander von Humboldt, Aimé Bonpland, Hipólito Ruiz, the great American botanist John Bartram, and Sir Joseph Dalton Hooker, these great plantsmen and others were equally gallant in their botanical exploits. And over the years, these botanist pioneers introduced a wealth of new plants for food, medicine, and horticultural delight. They gathered and sent home hundreds of thousands of flower specimens, where they became extensive collections of wealthy patrons, private gardeners, societies, and scientific institutions. And the carefully preserved plants were described by botanists and, yes, illustrated by the best artists of the day. Now, new discoveries and hence subsequent introductions have been recorded with superb skill and artistry over the centuries, creating a significant historical and scientific record. Through scientific observation, collecting and making herbaria, through illustration and painting, the true botanist and gifted artist seek to unravel and reveal the mysteries of the relationship between plants and other forms of life. This is the eye of a botanist, the immortality of an artist. Now today we appreciate the beauty of early botanical illustration, but its real purpose was to provide reference for botanists. Now botanical illustration is enjoying one of its greatest periods of popularity, to judge from the number of publications and exhibitions on the subject. Now despite its merits as an art form, botanical illustration is mainly an aid to science, and this generally means pictures in books rather than pictures on walls. In short, the science of botany depends not on original drawings, but on printed illustrations. Now, descriptive botany only began to flourish after the development of the printing press in the middle of the 15th century. Now, as long as these pictures were copied by hand, inaccuracies crept in, the images worsening with each successive copying until they became quite useless for identification purposes. Now, portraits of plants have been made at different times by diverse types of artists and for diverse purposes. In the beginning, to record the homely wildflowers of the European homeland, to make known exotics from distant countries, to record the intricacies of plant structure for the classifying botanist, to bring knowledge within the reach of a student, or yes, a moment of fleeting pleasure to princesses. All right, let's slow down just for a moment. Before man became a botanical scientist only yesterday, he turned to plants as a sustenance for his body and a solace for his ills an eternity ago. Now, the roots of botanical art and the science of botany originated in ancient times with the Greeks and the Romans. The 1st century AD is memorable for two important botanical works: Natural History of Pliny the Elder in Latin and Dioscorides' De Materia Medica in Greek. Hand-copied, attentively studied word for word, line by line. More than any other book in botany, and more than any other book in the world except one, yes, Dioscorides' De Materia Medica, AD 65, the authoritative source on medicinal plants for 1,500 years, right on up to the Renaissance. Renaissance compendia dealing with plants were called herbals, okay? The Renaissance led to an explosion of new observations and interpretations of nature as had never before been imagined, okay? So Renaissance compendia dealing with plants were called herbals. Herbals and herbalism developed in the Renaissance. The first printed herbal appeared about 1470. Well, realism was desired and soon achieved. With greater interest and demand in accurate identification of medicinal plants, 16th century herbalists hired artists to show all the characteristics, as in this very early first illustration of this New World grain we know of as corn here. Well, even though the first printed herbal appeared about 1470, German herbalists, especially Otto Brumfels of 1530 and Leonhard Fuchs of 1542, are really the beginnings of modern botanical drawing. These fine naturalistic woodcuts of plants were to have far-reaching influence on botanical illustration for many years to come. With the Renaissance came the revival of naturalism, but the function of that botanical illustrator remained at first unchanged. The 16th and 17th centuries, the years of gestation of botany and horticulture, they arose as refinements of knowledge from the arts and crafts of medieval medicine and agriculture. Yes, botanical activity was flourishing throughout Europe, Mexico, China, and India. The flower garden and the use of plants for their ornamental value developed from this period. This is the years of works on farming techniques, of tomes of materia medica, of descriptions of exotics and directives for growing them, and of delicate books for the ladies on the uses of plants and perfumeries in the intimacies of their boudoir. This was the 16th and 17th centuries. The 17th and 18th centuries, oh, the merely useful plant yielded way to the merely beautiful plant. And artists were required to record these rare flowers grown in the gardens of these wealthy amateurs. Now, this new interest in gardens and decorative flowers led to the production of books called Florilegia, often with splendid hand-painted flower illustrations, as in Robert Thornton's The Temple of Flora, perhaps the most famous of all of these Florilegia. Well, Florilegia often portrayed plants brought from distant places, such as those in Robert Ferber's The 12 Months of Flowers. Here they served as a catalog of plants for sale from his nursery. Now, an impressive 17th century Florilegium was Bessler's Hortus Isotensis. However, this and later Florilegia were really no more than unsystematic anthologies of flower portraits, usually with little, if any, supporting text. They are of really little use to the classifying botanists today. However, exploring for plants new to science led to the publication of books in which the floral details were shown so that botanists could place these plants into their proper classification. Look at this 1714 hand-colored engraved plate of the inflorescence of banana. Here, already in great detail, we see the male flowers separated from the female flowers here by these large red conspicuous bracts. Unbelievable great detail already beginning to develop.